Afternoon, Roberto.
Okay, we are back at Genesis chapter 6, and last time we started into just the first few verses. There was so much there about the sons of God and the daughters of men and how we might interpret that, and we can review those and the Nephilim and all those things. But I want to start with a little review of what we know. There are things they're controversial things we don't fully understand. Who the Nephilim were, exactly who these sons of God are. We mentioned the different theories of that. Are they heavenly beings? Are they the godly line of Seth? Are they kings and those in authority? You can make a case for each of those, but clearly you'll notice before we talked about this, that the way it speaks, this is another fall. Something traumatic, something has been corrupted here. Just like we saw in Genesis 3, the language of they saw that something was good or attractive, and they took it. Something that was forbidden them was seen as attractive and luring to them, and they took it. And that was this great rebellion. And it was this, just like we saw in Genesis 3, when Eve saw the fruit was good to eat, and she took it and gave it to her husband. So we have this second, it just feels like reading Genesis. I don't know if you're getting depressed yet, but it's just a spiral of depravity. It just gets worse and worse and worse. And that's really the point of the stories, as we see mankind falling into greater depravity. But the other part I want to emphasize is that these fallen ones, these Nephilim, are clearly wicked and displeasing to the Lord. Whatever these things are, whoever these people are, they are clearly an abomination to the Lord. But how are they considered to the people of the world? The last phrase.
Mighty men who were of old, the men of renown.
Yeah. These were heroes to the world. So again, that also kind of reflects the nature of things, that we are so depraved that our heroes are wicked men, are wicked beings that are abomination to the Lord. And they celebrate. That's like I mentioned before about in the Hindu religion, it's like they worship all these other gods, and they have these stories also of gods who had intercourse with human beings, and like I think some of these, like the Krishna, and there's different human characters who are descendants of gods, and they venerate them all. And I'm like, well, I mean, the big difference between us and the Hindus is, not that we disagree on the characters as much as we disagree on who are the good ones, who are the good ones and who are the bad ones. And we say, your gods, we believe that there are these spiritual beings who have power. We just believe that they're in rebellion to God, and they are not to be worshipped. They're not to be trusted. They are on the side of evil and chaos. So let's take a look. We're going to pick it up here. Genesis 6, verses 5 to 8. It really sums up. I really think these few verses are well worth memorizing, because they capture not just the heart of man, but the heart of God in this. So let's take a look at that. And I'm going to start here with Nancy. Would you get that for us? Verses 5 to 8, Genesis 6, 5 to 8. I'm going to make it bigger. Oh, sorry about that. Like I said, all right, here we go.
The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man with whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals, creeping things, and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made man. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord.
All right. So we have this thing where the Lord sees. If you remember, that phrase was used in Genesis 1, wasn't it? The Lord saw. What did he see in Genesis 1?
It was good.
Yeah. The Lord saw, compared to Genesis 1, where he looked out and saw, where God saw that it was good, he now looks out and sees this creation, and he sees the man that he's created in his image, and he sees, what does the Lord see?
That every thought of men is continually wicked,
Yeah,
evil in his heart.
yeah. So he starts out with this phrase, the wickedness of man was great in the earth. All right. Well, what does that mean? Well, what's the next part? That every
Intention.
intention of the thoughts of his heart was
Evil.
only evil. Continually. I think the NIV says it's only evil all the time. So what you'll notice what the Lord sees. It's really interesting what he sees. When he looks out and he sees the wickedness of man, what is he seeing when he looks out?
Well, can I say just?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think it's important to address words like God saw. First of all, in my mind,
Yeah.
I mean, God is omniscient. He never takes in new information, ever.
Yeah.
And so people see words like this sometimes, like the open theist, to insist that God takes in new information and he's learning things every day, just like us. When in reality, the Bible is God's revelation.
Yeah.
It's his revelation of himself. So if I'm a young Jew and I'm learning what this God is like, and I see a word like God saw, I know, in fact, that we can't schmooze God, that he is aware of everything, that there's no way I can fool him. He sees, he hears the cry of the oppressed. I see words like that, and I know that God it shouts of his omniscience, that nothing gets past him.
Yeah.
It certainly does not mean that he's learning things like some people
No,
will say.
absolutely correct. You're right in saying that. Just like when we talk about God remembered,
Yes,
doesn't mean that he forgot it. Remembering
exactly.
about to act upon it. I think the same thing with saw, that he sees something, doesn't mean that he didn't see it before. It means that he sees it in a way that now he's going to do something about it, or he's going to make a judgment upon it. And so he sees and he judges and he says, but you'll notice again, the focus of what he sees, there's no mention of the actions of man in this passage, even though we learned earlier that the earth, does it get there yet? Oh, maybe it's a little bit later on. He'll talk about that the earth was filled with violence. It'll talk about that in the next few verses, but that's not the problem. That's just a symptom. It's kind of like, the tumors is not, in a sense, the problem. It's the cancer that's producing those tumors is the problem. You can get rid of the tumors, but if you don't get rid of the cancer, they're just going to come back, and we're going to be in big trouble. So he sees the heart. So he looks upon the heart, and what he sees is that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Well, let's talk about what does that mean. And notice also the absoluteness of each word here. The every intention of his thoughts was only evil continually, all the time.
The end of Romans 14 says anything that is not from faith is sin, by definition. And so I think the last thing that fallen men want to do is glorify God. They have nothing no desire to glorify God. So their actions are by definition not good.
Yeah.
If he's not going to glorify, if they're not to glorify God.
Yeah, yeah, and the inclination, the direction of man is away from God. It's not toward him. It's only evil. It's toward going back to remember how the story begins in Genesis. How did it describe what was there before God begins the work of creation? Do you remember how it was described?
And void.
Chaos. It was void, the emptiness, without form, empty, and darkness, right? No light, no form, no fruit, just empty, formless, and no light. And evil is always moving you back to that place, like gravitational pull. It's moving us back to that place of chaos as we see the violence is going to overcome things. The breaking of the orders here. There's the look at all the borders that have been crossed here, breaking down, taking things forbidden, going in places you're not to go. Things that have been separated are now, they're by God, people are trying to cross over those borders and take things that don't belong to them. Breaking down what marriage is, taking multiple wives in that way, taking the forbidden fruit, all this taking going on, and leading it to this dark, violent, chaotic way, going back to the chaos that we began with. That's how evil moves. It moves us toward in that direction, toward those things, which is why as you're looking at the culture, it's like I was reading an article today about the queering of Christianity, I think it was called. It's a pretty disturbing article about things that have been happening in churches and in seminaries, where they're teaching this gender ideology, where they have drag queens coming into services, where they are offering prayers to the great they, them, and the God of all pronouns, and this kind of nonsense. And
Wow.
and they keep it, you thought it was bad, and then it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And you're like, when is it going to stop? And I'm telling you, it's not going to stop until you're left with the primordial ooze that we saw before, the chaos. It's evil is a nihilistic force. It's always its desire is destruction. It's not building anything. It's destroying everything. That's what it does. And so that's why there's no end to it. And if it left unchecked, it continues down that path of ultimate destruction. And you think it's going to stop with gay marriage? No, it's going to continue. You think it's going to stop with transgender surgeries, mutilating the kids? No, it's going to head, if it can, it's going to go to pedophilia. It's going to go to absolute destruction. Who knows? I mean, the abominations are unfathomable, how far this can go. That's the nature of evil. And the world has gotten to this place now in Genesis 6 that there is nothing good. Every intention is toward this place, toward the darkness, toward the chaos, toward the violence and the evil. And that's where we are. He sees the intentions of the heart. So what's really interesting about the passage is it tells us about the heart of man, but in the next verse, it tells us about the heart of God in verse 6. And let's take a look. So we see the depravity of mankind here. Let's look again at the passage and see the heart of God. What is his heart about? Would Elizabeth, would you read verse 6 for us again?
Sure.
Verses
And the Lord,
7, sorry, go ahead.
6 and 7?
Yeah.
And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them.
All right, we got some things to talk about here, don't we?
Yes. Mhm.
All right, so first thing, it says the Lord regretted,
Mm.
and he later says, I am sorry
Right.
that I have made them. All right. Did God make a mistake?
God doesn't make mistakes. He
Doesn't.
knows the beginning from the end.
He certainly does. He certainly does. This is a mystery here of how we think about this. What does it mean then that he regretted and says that I'm sorry that I've made them? Go ahead, Rob.
Well, I'm just thinking of another passage where God changed his mind when he was going to wail on the Jewish people. And Moses prayed, and it says that God repented of or regretted or changed his mind, and he didn't wail on the people. And so taken in isolation, you can think that somehow Moses' prayers changed God's mind. And if that's the case, then one of God's attributes goes down the drain. How is God the all-wise God if Moses convinced him to go another direction? How is God all-wise? So the bottom line in that passage is that Moses is allowed to become a mediator. That's the point of the passage, that Moses intervenes, and not that God changed his mind like somehow Moses convinced him, but that Moses intervenes for the people. He's a type of Christ, and he becomes a mediator, and God goes another direction.
All right, let me ask you this question though. If Moses had not intervened, would
Yeah.
God have changed his mind?
Well, I don't deal in hypotheticals, Pastor.
I mean, but if Moses hadn't prayed, would God have destroyed the people?
I would say
I would
yes.
say yes.
Absolutely. Now that didn't happen. And that's one of those things. It's like, so this is you have to have two hands for this, because I think if you miss it out, if you just try to explain things with one hand, you end up with a very distorted view of God.
Yeah.
One thing that you can't get around with in this passage, I want you to notice, what's your impression of God in verses 6 and 7, particularly verses 6?
Very distressed. He's heartbroken.
I mean, he says here, the Lord is grieved to his heart
Mhm.
about this. Now, is that significant that he's
Oh, no.
grieved to his heart about this?
If I'm a Jewish kid learning what the Creator is like, that passage tells me something about God.
What does it tell you?
It says that God is righteous, first of all. He takes notice of unrighteousness.
Okay.
It certainly does not say, again, that God didn't see something coming and is now sad. It's not saying that, because God ordains all things, including that situation.
That's fine. We're not talking about his ordination. We're talking about his sadness. Is he sad?
I have to take it at face value. Yes.
Yes, it says it, right?
Because
So that's why I say I think this is where it's a really important discipline, especially for us Reformed people here, is to just to say, let's take it as it comes at us here, and not try to fit it in to our systems just yet here. Let's just think carefully. We don't want to miss what it's really telling us about God.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
He is grieved. He's genuinely grieved here about this. Why would he be so sad?
Because he loves us very much, and we've really disappointed him.
Yeah, he's not. So he is not judging the world as an impartial, judge, but as a father who has to throw his son out of the house, who has to it grieves him. It's very personal. God has made man in his image and to be his children, and they've become so depraved and so vile and it cuts him to the heart, which you can start to understand why he waits so long, 120 years. God is not a policeman. He's a terrible policeman. Any policeman that waits that long to stop a crime, and judges that wait that long, no, only a father waits that long, and puts up with this stuff for so long. I mean, this really always stuns me. It's like, it doesn't say the Lord saw the wickedness of man and he was filled with fury. It shockingly says, and it grieved him to his heart.
Mm.
He feels this regret and pain, and how that fits with his sovereignty, I don't know, but it does somehow. And he is filled with grief, and his you see in the same passage his justice and his holiness, but also his love and his tenderness and compassion for his children, that he, before he destroys them all, is to the point of, I'm sorry that I've made them. I just am like, is feeling this distress. And again, it's not saying God made a mistake.
No.
We know that's not the case. Other texts will make that clear. We know that this doesn't mean that God didn't know this was going to happen. We know that he knows all things. All those texts make it clear. Yet somehow, in his complete sovereignty and omniscience and power, he grieves.
And I think it also speaks to his patience, that
Yeah.
a father's patience with his children,
Yeah.
and God was very patient with mankind.
Yes.
I think over the years, we've started off many Bible studies by asking this question: what is God's overriding purpose, period? If you had to say one thing, that the number one purpose of God in his being, what is it? And
Saving souls.
no,
Glorify
They
himself.
glorify him.
right, Claudette. Number one purpose of God is to manifest his glory to the creature. Number one. And he's not a head case. He doesn't need our glory. We need to glorify him.
Yeah.
And that's his number one purpose. Now, when I don't care if we're talking about election or destroying mankind or whatever, it all comes back to what is his number one purpose, because everything is funneled from that. That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree completely. And, Genesis 6, you see him displaying his glory. He's telling us about the heart of God in this passage. How in the world could we ever know the heart of God? How in the world could we see these things? I don't even know the heart of another person, let alone the heart of God. And yet he's telling us the heart of God is he regretted, he grieved, he felt sorrow and sorry for what has happened here. That's the heart of God in this. As well as, we see his justice. He will not allow this wickedness to prevail. He will punish it and bring justice and pure judgment to it. This two themes are continually there. There's another story that I think in the New Testament that beautifully displays these attributes of God, his sovereignty, his control, and yet his compassion, his tenderness, and even his sorrow in the midst of it. And that's the raising of Lazarus. If you remember that story in John 11, and the story begins where Jesus makes the declaration that he is going to raise Lazarus from the dead. You remember that? It begins with Lazarus has died, and I'm going to go there and wake him up. I'm going to bring him back. He knows exactly what's going to happen. He knows exactly how it's going to happen. And yet you have that incredible 2-word verse in John
He
11.
wept.
What it was?
He wept.
He wept.
That Jesus wept. He sees the sorrow of those around him, and he is God in the moment. Not just God transcending time, he's also God in the moment. And the moment is one of deep sorrow and pain, and he feels that pain. And so we can see the Lord here. It's like he is absolutely, he knows exactly what he's going to do and how he's going to do it. He's in complete control. And so he is God over all, but he's also the Lord in the moment. And in the moment, he feels the grief. He feels the emotion. Our God has emotions. He is not what does it say in scripture about our God is a jealous God? He's a passionate God. He has the emotions of anger and kindness and compassion. He weeps. He is not Is it the word impassivity? I can't remember.
Yes, yes.
That.
That's a seldomly known attribute.
Yeah, he's impassible, in that he doesn't feel it. Is that what it is? I can't remember how it goes.
He's not controlled by his emotions, is the official definition.
He's not controlled by his it's a tricky definition because it's clear that he has emotions.
Right.
And he's not emotional in the way that we're emotional, where we lose sense of our reason and all that other stuff and do crazy things. But he feels things here, and I don't understand how that works, but it does, and I think it's important to get that. He really is presented to us as the father of mankind, and the grief that he feels is true. All right. So
Right,
that's-
that's interesting. If we're to love him, that's really important. I mean, if he was just a Robotron, being aware of everything, how it's going to happen, and he sets up this nice little story to point to his glory, and that's all he was. There was nothing else.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to love him, frankly.
Yeah.
But when we see these emotions, it's a different story.
And most of the, it's really interesting is most of the false religions really present God. So they have in like the Roman pantheon or the Greek pantheon or all these other ones, all the individual gods, these lesser gods, they are emotional creatures. They're violent. They get sad. They fall in love. They have all the emotional experiences. They're really interesting. But they all believe that above them, there is sort of this unknown God, Brahman or whatever it is, that is above it all, who is sort of distanced from the world and isn't really so personal. And that is the lie of the evil one, of
Right.
how he basically slanders God as the Most High God does not care about you.
Mhm.
He does not feel anything for you. He does not care. He is distant. He's the watcher. He has nothing to do with us. He's the unknown and unknowable God. And the scriptures say, no, you're all liars and frauds, you false gods. The Lord knows, and he can be known, and he grieves, and he is the most personal of all. That's why it irritates me with, the whole idea is that when you're in trouble, that you would, pray to a saint or pray to Mary, thinking that she would understand your situation better than the Lord would. I'm like, no one knows your situation better than Christ.
Yeah.
So anyways, but that's another story. Let's move along. The Lord regretted, but then it concludes with verse 8. Well, let's talk first before about the plan. So the Lord's decree in verse 7 is, what is he going to do?
Blot out his created form, face, man's, animals, creeping things. Blot out his creation except Noah.
So he's going to blot out man, whom I have
Mm.
created from the face of the land.
Right.
And who else? And
Animals,
animals
creepy things, birds of the
things,
heavens.
and birds of the heavens.
It's interesting that he would blot out the animals and the birds, because we don't typically think of them as being
It's sinful.
consciously able to think out evil
Yeah.
things.
Right.
You notice there's one realm that he's not blotting out.
The plant kingdom.
The what?
Well, the plants, the plants will come back, but true, the plants, but what else? What are the
Well, the sea creatures,
the sea creatures get a break here. They don't they won't be blotted out. The focus of the judgment, you'll notice, is in two realms here.
the sky and the earth.
Yeah, the focus, there are three realms. There's the sky, the earth, the heavens, the earth, and the waters. And the focus of judgment is on the heavens and the land, which kind of coincides with the spiritual rebellion of the heavens and the earthly rebellion of the land. But this is the focus of it. I'm sorry that I've made them. He's going to blot them out, except, what does it say? The Lord, The one is up. All right, so we'll start with the Lord's decree of judgment. And then we have the last verse 8. What does it say?
Noah
see.
found
Noah
favor
found
in
favor
the Lord.
Noah found favor in the eyes of the
in the
Lord.
eyes of the Lord.
Okay. The Lord's with judgment, there is this salvation somehow. And we're told that Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Okay, what does that mean then? That Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Thoughts on that?
He was righteous.
Yeah. Yeah. He's righteous. What's different about Noah? Is he perfect?
No.
No.
No,
No.
but he was obedient, even though he was ridiculed.
Yeah,
It's
there's
still-
something about
It's
Noah.
still grace. It's still grace that Noah's getting.
It is grace. Yeah, it is absolutely grace. But Noah is righteous, and this is where we talk about the righteous and the wicked. I think it's helpful to get at the wicked. It's all about the intention of the thoughts of the heart. That the direction of the heart is what the Lord is seeing here, not the actions that a person does can be almost identical, but the intentions of the heart can be completely different. So, for example, if I have two sons and I tell them to clean their rooms, and they both clean their rooms to the exact specifications, but one does it joyfully in order to please me, and the other does it begrudgingly because he's afraid I'm going to punish him. We see that it's the same actions, but the heart is completely different. One heart is inclined toward me, wanting to please. The other heart is inclined against me, away from me. And one sees me as his father, the other sees me as a slave master and despises me for it. Noah, unlike the rest of mankind, his heart is something about his heart of faith, he walks with the Lord, like Enoch. He finds favor because of his faith. It's not that he deserves to be saved, but there is something there that is pleasing to the Lord, as we'll find. And when you read Hebrews 11, it clearly mentions he has faith, he does these things. But there is this moment of grace, and every fall scene every scene was like this. You had God blessing and giving all things to the man, and then there's this rebellion, and then God shows grace as well as his judgment. So we saw that with Adam and Eve. They rebel against him, but God kicks them out, but he clothes them before he sends them out. Cain kills Abel. Yes, he's going to be a fugitive from the land. He'll be punished. But even there, God puts a mark on him so that he would not be killed, and shows some grace and mercy to him. It's kind of like he's like the father. He kicks the son out of the house because he has to, but he puts $1,000 in his bank account to help him along the way. There's just this, this grace that he cannot restrain himself. And so even here, as he's about to wipe out the earth, he would do well to just wipe it all out and try to start again. But here he shows grace in one man, in Noah, and we'll start again with him. So can you move closer, Jack?
Yeah, I'm still having, I don't know, thoughts about what God did not attempt to wipe out, i.e., the sea creatures and the plants. He created the plants before man. Did he create sea creatures before man? Or before the animals?
Well,
Yeah.
here's the difference between, do you know the difference between the all the animals, for example, the were created. Well, let's see, the plants he created on the third day, The man, the birds and the fish he created on the fifth day, and the man and the animals he created on the sixth day. And man and the animals, what did he create them from? What that's one thing that they all have in common.
From the earth.
From the earth. He creates them from the dust, from the ground. He creates them, and the ground had been cursed now. The birds as well. I don't remember if he created the birds from the ground. It doesn't really say. Just that he spoke them in day 5. He doesn't really focus on them so much.
It was just interesting to me that, he did them in groups. And when it came time to wipe it out, he took just the last group, the man and animals.
Yeah. The focus is on really the land. We're gonna judge the earth, the land, the ground. That's what was cursed, if you remember, in
But
Genesis.
again, the plants are from the ground.
Yeah, well, in a sense, they were also wiped out too.
Yeah.
And then came back. So there you go.
Okay, that they were mentioned, that's all.
But there-
It just it seemed interested to me, and my mind just went that way.
The land, the vegetation is a different kind of life than animals and people.
Right, it doesn't have the spirit.
Yeah, they don't have they don't move about, they don't have their thing. So he's gonna blot out, just start all over. And unfortunately the man and the animals are gonna have to go with the man here. The animals don't deserve it, but they're gonna have to be wiped out too. Yeah.
Except that he does save animals. He doesn't wipe them all out, just like he didn't wipe out Noah and his family.
Starting again.
Right.
Okay, so, all right, let's pick it up. Verse 9 and 10. Let's start there. Nancy, did we get you ready? I think we asked. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
You did.
What, read 9 and 10.
These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God, and Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
All right, so these are the generations of Noah. That's a phrase that's used a lot in Genesis, if you remember. It's kind of beginning a new section here. So we've already seen these are the generations of the heavens and the earth. I believe we saw these are the generations of Adam, if I'm not mistaken. We now kind of entering a new section here of the book. So we'll say just a new section begins. And it says this about Noah. This is why Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. What does it say about him? Verse 9.
He was
Righteous
righteous
and
and
blameless.
blameless.
So righteous man, blameless in his generation. But wait a minute, I thought no one was righteous.
Righteous in his faith led him to righteousness.
Yeah. Noah walked with God.
Hmm.
Now that's an interesting phrase too. What does that mean? He walked with God.
Hmm.
Remember, God in Genesis oftentimes appears in physical form, walking. He could literally be walking with him for all we know. But-
Enoch, too.
What's that?
He walked with Enoch too.
With Daniel?
Enoch.
Oh, Enoch. Yeah, Enoch walked with God. Yes. He's a righteous man. He's blameless in his generation. And this is not a reference to his, again, not that he is without sin. Because we know, we'll find out later on, he'll get drunk and he'll make a spectacle of himself.
He's positionally righteous, not practically righteous.
Yeah, he's right with God. Again, if we can see it in those terms of like, righteousness is not this, it's our status with God. It's where we stand with God. Are we at peace with him, or are we at war with him? Are we, are we rebelling against him, or are we part of him? So you see this, if you've been a teacher, I've always been helpful as a former teacher. You come into a classroom, and there are students there that you would say they're good students. And there are other students, you would say, they are bad students. And in one sense, it has nothing to do with their grades. I've had bad students that got straight A's in my class. And I've had good students that barely passed. And what's the difference between the good
One's-
and bad student?
One's teachable, one's not.
Yeah, one wants to be there and wants to, as simply as this, a good student, it's his heart. He wants to learn. And the bad student doesn't. And same thing with the Noah of all his generations, he's the only one who wants to follow God, who walks with God. That's what makes him righteous and blameless, is he wants him. That's what faith is. We want to follow him. It's a disposition of the heart. It's if you judged him by his deeds, I'm sure there are other people of his generation that he could probably had similar deeds to. But Noah's heart was, he loved the Lord. He wanted to be with the Lord, unlike the rest of the generation who didn't. I mean, and when you think about it, that's horrifying that the world was so depraved that only one man out of the millions on earth at that time could be found. And it brings to another question here too. I really stress this as we talk about sin and judgment. And a lot of times people get confused because they say, you know what, we're sometimes told that, you know, if you commit one sin, then you can go to hell for committing one sin. If you've heard that before, you know, heaven's a perfect place. You commit one sin, you're going to go to hell. And that just doesn't seem right, because wait a minute, you say, if I lived a perfect life and all I did was steal a pencil from my teacher's desk, I'm going to go to hell for that. And I'm like, I don't even want to argue that, because we're not even close to that, folks. The problem with mankind is not that we committed one sin. It's that every thought of our hearts was only evil all the time. We've been in rebellion against God. That's what's damning us, not our little peccadillos, not our little mistakes. It's our rebellion against God that has put us in this place that we deserve damnation, as we see in the story of Noah. God is not judging the world because they've made mistakes. So, any question about that before we continue here? So we had.
I have one question about Noah walking with God.
Yeah.
God did walk, like, in the cool of the night with Adam and Eve. And I thought that once sin entered the world, that separated God from man, so he no longer walked with them physically. Do you know what I mean?
But he does. You see
he
him
does
later
still
on.
does.
Remember, he visited Abraham in physical form.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true. Okay.
He appears. Now, what that looks like to walk with God, I don't know, but it's clear in the next passage that God is having a very personal interaction with Noah. What that looks like, we're not told, but he is clearly engaging with Noah here.
Okay.
All right, then we're introduced to don't want to forget this, is that Noah had 3 sons.
Please.
And these 3 sons are going to be very important after the story is over with. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So Shem will later on become the next line that is going to bring the salvation. And the word Semite comes from the name Shem. You may have heard that. People are anti-Semites. Shem became sort of the name for the Jewish race and the Hebrews. They're descendants of Shem, of his people. So, all right, let's continue there. We got a little more time here. Bob Fowler, would you get the next section for us here? Let's take a look at, let me try to think where to stop it here. I don't want to read the whole thing. Hope we lost our place. Okay, here we go. Maybe take it up to just verse 13. We'll start there, 11 to 13.
Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on earth. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end to all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth.
All right, one more time, the judgment is pronounced. Again, talks about God's sight. In God's sight this time. That's interesting. There's a different phrase here, isn't there? Before it was the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great, and it was always about the Lord, and now we're coming back and it's talking about God. That's kind of interesting. Huh. All right. So in God's sight, by the way, so oftentimes, just a little note, one of the things you notice is in the Bible, when it's just God, it's oftentimes God who is sort of above all things, watching things. And when it talks about the Lord, that's more personally interacting with them. So there's some differences here, but he sees, it is interesting, this passage does change and speaks to God as God, not as the Lord, but as God. Not sure what exactly to make of that, but in God's sight now, he sees. And what does he see? Regarding the
Yes.
earth.
The earth
It's
filled with
corrupt.
violence.
Yeah, the earth is filled with violence.
And corrupt.
The earth was corrupt. And why was the earth corrupt?
Because the flesh had corrupted it
All flesh had corrupted
their way.
their way on the earth.
Mm.
And he says, so you'll notice that the focus here, back in Genesis 6, the beginning of it, the focus of his judgment was on mankind, and he sees the hearts of mankind and regrets. In the next part, his focus is on the earth, what he sees, the corruption of the earth. So you're going to kind of see that the Lord sees the heart, but he doesn't bring the judgment until it bears fruit, until it's visible, if you'll notice that. So he'll tell that to Noah. He's like, the Amorites are wicked and they're going to be judged, but it's going to be 400 years because their sin has not yet reached its completion. There's a certain point in which he knows it's corrupt, but he won't judge it until it is seen by all. And so the earth then this is a visible corruption. It's filled with violence. You can see it now. You don't need to be told that the heart of man is wicked. You can see it with your own eyes as they're killing each other, as they're raping their women, as they're doing all sorts of wicked, depraved things. To say, oh, there it is. That's the heart of man on display now. Once that's happened now, he then begins its judgment now. So, because what would happen if God were to strike down man who is wicked of heart, but the man hadn't had a chance to do anything evil just yet? I mean, if there was actually a movie about this called The Minority Report. Have you seen this? It's an interesting movie. It's a futuristic society where they can predict who is going to commit a crime. And so they arrest the person before he commits the crime. All right. So, of course, you can see there's some problems with this here, folks. You know, you can't really, that's not just, and you begin to look like a tyrant that way. So if the Lord just, destroys mankind because he sees how wicked they are, but if he alone sees it, then all the rest of creation does not see the justice of God. And so there needs to be this visible, it needs to be seen, which he shows here, that the earth is corrupted now, and it's a visible form of their evil is on display. So when the flood comes, you're not thinking, oh, how could he do that? That's terrible. You're
Mm.
thinking, what took you so long? I mean,
Right.
you're amazed more at his patience than you are at his wrath. So when time comes, it's clear to everybody. All right, so let's take a look at the next part. He says to the judgment, God's decree is, what is his decree in this context here? Says, verse 13. I have determined to make an end of all flesh. For the earth is filled with violence through them. I will destroy them with the earth.
Mm.
Okay, so there's the decree of judgment here. A couple things to say about that. It is at this point, though the Lord is sorrowful, as we saw in the last passage, we see his love. He now, in this passage, you see his resolve. It's done. It's going to happen. It's going to destroy. There is no turning back. There is no repentance. There's no time. This is judgment has been decreed. He will save Noah and his family, which is why you don't see God at this point sending prophets out into the world to give people a second chance. It's like it's been decreed. It's done. The earth is going to be destroyed now, and there's nothing more to be said about this. There's no turning back. However, in that, he's going to provide a means of salvation, as we'll see with Noah. So let's pick it up there. Any thoughts or comments on this part here so far, where we are?
I start to learn that God is both just and merciful.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm getting a picture painted here for me, because he would be totally just to smoke everyone, really, since the fall,
Yeah.
including Noah.
Yeah.
The only righteousness Noah has is not one that he's earned. It's positional righteousness through faith. And yeah, I mean, he's just. If he ended the story right here, he's going to wipe out the earth. I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
What stuns me is the mercy.
Yeah.
You know, that's why when we look at Romans 9 and people would get all hung up because he hated Esau, I'm more stunned because he loved Jacob.
Yeah, that he loved anybody.
Mm.
So again, I haven't really looked at it this closely before with folks. So this is really interesting as we're looking through it again, is in comparing it back to what was said here in 5 to 8. And the same story is told from two angles. One shows the heart of God, his love and compassion, and his heartache over what has happened and his grief over this. And then the second part really shows his holiness and his justice and resolve to is coming to an end. They're given to us together so that we will think about them together and not separate. So we don't worship the God of justice, who's just cold and hard and just the law and justice. On the other hand, we don't worship the softy God, who's just all full of love and flowers and just always affirms and cares for us and is so gives us tissues and is so compassionate. It's like you can't separate the two. He is love, he is holy and just. So, all right, let's pick it up from there. Let's see, where did we leave off here? Jack, have you read? I can't remember.
No, I haven't.
All right, would you get the next section here? 14. Let's see how far he takes it here. We'll see how it goes here. 14 down to the end.
Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you make it. The length of the ark is 300 cubits. Its breadth is 50 cubits and its height is 30 cubits. Make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above. Make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above. and set the door of the ark in its side. Make it with a lower, second, and third deck. For behold, I will bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life under heaven. Everything that is on earth shall die, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And every living thing of all flesh, you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. Of the birds according to their kinds, and of the animals according to their kinds. Of every creeping thing. I need a little more.
Sure.
And of every creeping thing of the ground according to its kind. 2 of every sort shall come into you to keep them alive. Also take with you every sort of food that is eaten, and store it up. It shall serve as food for you and for them. Noah did this, and he did all that God commanded him.
All right. So
Mm.
we now told the way in which God is going to save Noah and his family. And so what's the plan here? So first he says, the first command he gives him is what? Verse 14.
Build an ark of gopher wood.
All right, make an ark of gopher wood. Let's talk about that. What is an ark?
The big boat with a cover on
Like
it.
the Lord's ship, yeah.
Yeah, it's do you know what the word ark means?
Uh,
I had to look it up. It
All
is a chest
oh.
or a box, like the Ark of the Covenant. It's the same word. It's an ark. It's not really a boat. It's not designed to sail. It's just designed to stay afloat, is all it does. It's just a big box, a big chest that you would get into. What's that?
We saw the,
Oh, the Ark Encounter. How was it?
excellent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is
I only wanted to see the door that they put in the side because there's nails on it.
you need to come closer? I can't hear you again. Sorry.
It was pretty incredible the way God set it up. So that the water came from outside and leaked into all the animal stalls so that they could be watered and,
Oh,
you
that's
know, he
interesting.
had it, it was really just exceptional to see it. Where
Ah,
they grew their food, how they survived. The
That's-
door was very interesting because God himself closed the door. There
Closed
was
it.
no handle on it. It
yeah.
was really neat.
Really.
450 feet long? Because that's what 300 cubits is.
Yeah.
It was the exact size.
Now, 1.5 football fields?
Oh, yeah.
That's incredible.
They built it to specs there. It's so make an ark of gopher wood. I don't know anything about gopher wood. Anybody know anything about gopher wood? Or so we're just told to make an ark, and this is how you're to make it. What does he say about the ark? He says make the 2 things he first says about the ark. It's gonna be of gopher wood. It's gonna be make rooms.
Rooms and cover it with, in and out with pitch.
Cover it inside and out with pitch. Why does he do that?
To seal it.
Yeah, it's gonna be
From the
waterproof, right?
Hmm.
Okay. All right. And then he says, all right, these are the dimensions of the ark. Okay. So the dimensions of the ark are 300 dimensions.
Yeah. I got the
Ark.
number. 450 by 75 by 45 ultimately.
300 cubits is 450 feet.
Feet.
That would be long, right?
Yes,
And then it would be 50 cubits,
wide.
be wide, so that's 75 feet. wide and 30 cubits high, 45 feet high. Now, is that what would that be comparable to, like a battleship? I don't know if anyone knows offhand how big these things are.
I don't know, I'd be curious now to Google the USS Massachusetts down in Fall River. I've been to that many times, and how long
Yeah.
that is.
Well, wouldn't
Yeah,
it
but-
be a football field? You could say 4.5 football fields could
Well,
help us.
it would be 1.5 football fields. So a
Oh,
football
okay.
field is
Is
about
there
300
yards?
feet.
Or 100 yards?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So that's a good size boat. Good size
Mhm.
language there. Yeah.
With those dimensions, it does not
I'm
define-
sorry, get closer to Jack.
Those dimensions do not necessarily define the shape. You can have an oblong in that shape, you can have a box in that shape, so.
Yeah.
To assume that it was a boat, as you said, is not necessarily the case.
Yeah, he doesn't have him make a ship. He has him make an ark. An ark means a chest or a box. So it's probably shaped like a giant shipping container.
Mm.
You know, that seems to make more sense because it would also maximize the space if you're you're not built like a ship with that is meant to design to sail and to move quickly. The ark is just meant to survive. It's just meant to hold you in place, to keep you afloat. It's not meant to take you anywhere. It's just meant to hold you, to keep you alive. So, and then you're going to make a roof over the ark. Let's see. What does it say about the roof? Roof of the ark is to finish a cubit above. What does that mean? A cubit so it'd be 1.5 feet above.
Mm.
So I guess there'd be space between the top and the roof. Is that right?
Sounds
Either
that
that, or it might be referring to the pitch.
Make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above. Would that be the pitch of the roof? So it would go up, it'd be like 1.5 feet slant to it? The middle?
Over that width.
Oh, isn't
yeah.
a cubit 18 inches? If it's a cubit, it would be 18 inches.
Yeah,
above the
yeah,
top.
1 cubit. That would be
Probably
18.
like a cover, like the box, like a cover of a box.
So that would be the covering for it. So is it, I'm assuming then it would be, I think maybe you're right, that it's, that it would be pitched up, like angled up for about 1.5 feet. So it's a slight angle for it. And then to set the door of the ark in its side. Okay. All right. And then one more thing. We have how many decks? We have it's a triple decker, right?
3, yes.
Okay, lower, second, and third. Okay. All right. And then he says, behold, I will bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy the flesh. So now God's means of judgment are finally declared,
Mm.
which is what? This is going to be
flood.
flood of water here, right?
Flood of water. Mhm.
Okay. Of waters upon the earth. Okay.
Hmm.
And everything on the earth shall die. Okay. Earth shall die,
Except the fish.
except the fish. But everything on the earth, well, the fish aren't on the earth. They're in the waters. Everything on the earth, the land will die. I'll establish my covenant with you now. He mentions, now we have this mention of a covenant. God will establish covenant with whom?
Noah.
Yeah, with Noah. and your
His
sons,
family.
and your son's wife, and his family. How many is that total?
8.
8 in total, okay. And of every living thing. So then he says, okay, now he gives them for the commandments of who else will be saved.
2 of every kind. You shall take a male and a female.
All right, 2 of every kind, male and female. All right, and then,
No transgenders in there.
no.
Really, if they'd had non-binaries back then, he could have saved space.
It would have been, I think it would have been a short-lived humanity if that was the case, huh?
Yes.
Male and female, and then what else of the birds? 2 of every,
Of every kind.
2 of every kind of bird. And notice the language here. We've heard this before.
Yeah. Yeah.
According to its kind.
Mhm.
Getting back, you can see the creation story. It's coming back again here. And take with you every sort of food. Every sort of food. Okay.
Mhm.
And it shall service you. You're coming right back to, well, let's come back for a second here. And then Noah did all that God commanded him. Okay, good. There's his faith. That's how you know he had faith. This is
Mm.
faith in action. You can see, so God sees Noah's heart. He knows there's faith here. Noah's faith is on display when he obeys and does everything the Lord commands him. God sees the hearts of the world and knows that it's wicked. And we see its wickedness in the violence and the corruption that is abounding on the earth. So coming back as we'll kind of close out this section here, you can see what's happening, I hope, that we're going back to Genesis 1, when the waters were over the earth. And then the Lord begins to recreate things according to its kind and bringing all sorts of food according to its kind, every sort of food to you for food. We're reminded again of the days of creation when God is going to restart this work. And that's why the water is significant. It's the water is beginning, it's a new creation coming, and Noah will now become the new Adam and Eve and with his family. And so we're going to start again. We're going to start again. We'll see how it goes when it's all said and done. I have a sneaking suspicion it's not gonna stay good for long, but we'll get a fresh start at least, and we'll go from there. So, all right, let's break it here. Any last comments or questions about the text today?
I looked up gopher wood, and it is similar to teak, which is
Yeah.
teak, which is used in a lot of shipping and stuff.
Okay, so specifically perfect for staying afloat and for right,
And water tightness.
right,
Mm.
right.
And I think gopher wood, it can only be found in that section of the world where Noah was at that time.
Okay,
If I'm not mistaken.
interesting. All right, I'm gonna break it here. Let me stop recording here.